All right, good morning. It is Wednesday, September 2nd, and can you believe it? We're 6 months into this craziness.
Yeah, it's hard to believe
Mm-hmm.
about this weather that we've been having as of late. It's kind of a reminder, of where we are
Mm-hmm.
in a very doomed and gloomy situation.
Yeah, that's for sure. That's for sure. So, our lead story today that we're going to talk about is the delay in opening for New York City schools. So, it looks like the New York City schools are delaying their opening until September 21st. And evidently, for some reason, the teachers and the principals were not in a rush to to open the schools. Now we've been talking about for at least a month, if not longer, how we didn't feel like the schools were ready to be opened, and evidently, the teachers union and the principals union have been basically, negotiating with the mayor, and probably were ready to strike. Of course, that's not the story coming out of the mayor's office, but he announced that a deal had been reached with the unions to postpone it until September 21st. And supposedly, they finally realized that, schools are just not ready to open up. Um, so they're saying that 68% of the city's 1.1 million students will do this blended learning, and about 366,000 people are going to do only remote learning. And they are looking for school instruction days to start on September 16th. September 10th to 15th are preparation days for the educators. So, according to the mayor, starting on the 16th, we'll have a 3-day transitional period. And for those 3 days, instructions will begin remotely for all students. And then on September 21st, which is a Monday, the school buildings will open full strength. We'll go to blended learning, and that's basically when kids will be actually going into the schools. Um, Interesting.
I would love to see the names of those that will be only remotely learning.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and
And where they live.
yeah, that was going to be the next statement.
Mm-hmm.
And also, I don't understand how this is going to work because as of yet, we still have all of these schools in Harlem
Mm-hmm.
whose ventilation systems are just messy.
Right.
And so that was the main concern is ventilation. And I believe it's 51 or 52 Harlem schools had really bad ventilation systems. So I haven't seen anything else about that. Has that situation been cleared up when you moved the date? Because I was reading that about the same time I was reading that the schools were opening. So, you know,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
the main issue here is that the powers that be aren't listening,
Mm-hmm.
across the country in a pandemic where people are who never ever prayed before, never had a power greater than themselves, are thanking God that they still had a job
Mm-hmm.
in the pandemic. And yet these people are willing and have quit their jobs rather than go back into the teaching
Mm-hmm.
arena.
Well, and as we reported last week and in the last couple of weeks, we already know that the colleges and universities that went back early, are seeing, various degrees of outbreaks. University of Alabama, over 1,000 students. I think University of Urbana, Illinois, we talked about. I think we talked about University of Kansas last week. And so we were already seeing it's, it's not a good idea. But interestingly enough, our Department of Education came up with this back to school pledge,
Mm.
which they've had up on their website. Health and safety always comes first. And the pledge was that PPE, personal protective equipment, will be supplied to all schools, and we'll have a 30-day supply on hands at all time with a hotline for principals, full-time nurse in every public school. Any school building or room found to have inadequately ventilation will not be used by students or staff. Students and staff will practice physical distancing in all schools. Students will remain in pods for as much of the day possible. Students and staff will wear face coverings throughout the day. If they don't have them, they'll be provided for free. Hand sanitizer in every classroom. Prioritized free COVID testing and expedited results for school staff. Free testing is also available to all students, families, and New Yorkers citywide. Encouraging all DOE employees to be tested monthly. Schools will communicate with all students and families when there are confirmed cases in schools. When necessary, classrooms or school buildings will temporarily close to maintain safety of school communities, and school buildings will close if the percentage of COVID-19 tests in New York City is 3% or more using a 7-day average, the most aggressive threshold in the nation. They're also promising that all school buildings will be cleaned and disinfected overnight, and high-touch zones will be cleaned multiple times during the day, and electrostatic disinfectors will clean surfaces daily with zero physical contact. So these are the pledges, which it sounds great, but clearly the teachers and the principals unions, which were working, I think, in the same direction on this, we're not having it. They're not willing to have their lives be put at risk and be a guinea pig for a plan that wasn't really fully thought out or ready to implement.
Yeah, now some reason we should not, just for some strange reason, we should not forget all those asymptomatic people out there.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
The temperature is not going to show anything.
Yeah.
And just imagine getting these kids in school. They have not seen their friends in 6 months.
Mm-hmm.
And I could just see now the teacher, no, Johnny, you can't hug Alicia. No, get away from those people. You got to stay, trying to make that understandable to children.
And that's the problem, is that there's really no real way that they can stop that. One teacher in a classroom full of kids, how are you really going to enforce that? And then so there's also the issue of, for the remote learning, how well, we had issues in the spring of kids in our neighborhood, most of them not having the technology, the tablets that they needed, or the internet connections to be able to do the remote learning. So we're going to continue to look in on this, but still we have a concern that not enough technology has been distributed evenly throughout the system so that everybody is having opportunity for an equal education. And this is something that we're going to have to address as well.
And the financial situation of people have not changed. I remember when Clayton Banks was on the show and he talked about how, the child who was an avid learner just kind of like disappeared. And it's like, well, we didn't have any power.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And we had the Harlem blackout. A lot of people didn't even know that blackout took place around the state.
Mm-hmm.
Not only that, but you had kids that never got on. Are they monitoring these students to know who actually were not involved in that, who actually never got on,
mm-hmm.
what the problems were, and were they working to sort of circumvent them? Some of these kids that, I heard about in my neighborhood, they're like, they didn't get on. And so what's the result? Well, they didn't get on, and that was that. So these kids some of them were already behind. And now add 6 months onto that. So now what's going to happen with these kids? Because now you have to go through the process of catching them up to the best of your ability. And at the same time, having anxiety being in this closed situation with these children, trying to address whatever they may be going to, because this is going to be something on these kids psychologically.
Mm-hmm.
To be so close and not touch. We can't have lunch together or whatever. Who's monitoring the bathrooms? Are they going to have extra security to make sure that someone is, sanitizing these bathrooms on a regular basis? I mean, you tell us as children, don't sit on the toilet. But once you close the door, who's to say what these kids are doing in those stores? So who's monitoring that?
Yeah,
I haven't heard anything about, the sanitary conditions in terms of toileting. And if ever there's a place that you can get in this, what are they saying? It will be done multiple times a day.
yes.
But this is a virus that you can't do multiple times a day. You sanitize in your own home, and then you go and you do something and you sanitize again because it doesn't necessarily kill the virus. So you have a continuous thing.
Mm-hmm.
Still frightening to me.
Absolutely. So I want to switch gears and talk about a report they talked about unusual symptoms of COVID, and this was an article that AARP put out where they're talking about, now that we have more information about it, they're seeing other types of symptoms or after effects. So one of them, COVID toes. And so they're talking about people who got red and purple colored toes that swell, burn, and itch from COVID-19, according to dermatologist Dr. Esther Friedman. And according to Dr. Esther Friedman, the good news is that this does go away. So they're not seeing that it has permanent damage. And they're saying that the majority of people with COVID toes, which Freeman likens to chilblains, which is an inflammatory skin condition that often occurs after exposure to very cold temperatures, so don't experience other symptoms of a coronavirus infection, and they don't necessarily require hospitalization for care. But many patients are developing these toe lesions well after their infection, or they're otherwise completely asymptomatic except for the toes. So, so if you're looking down and you're seeing red and purple toes, that is a COVID symptom.
Yeah.
That's not athlete's feet.
Right.
Another symptom that they see, and we certainly knew about this, is symptoms of diarrhea, nausea, vomiting, and appetite loss in a number of patients, young and old. And so they did a study out of Stanford University School of Medicine that found that nearly 1/3 of 116 patients infected with coronavirus reported mild gastrointestinal symptoms. And this also connected with reports out of China from a study of 200 patients that more than half experienced diarrhea, nausea, or vomiting. And so gastrointestinal symptoms is also on the list of symptoms that you can see from COVID.
Yeah. And again, when we do these reports, we don't come to scare you, we come to prepare you.
Mm-hmm.
These are all things that if it's not normal for you to have different stomach or, problems with evacuation, that, this is something that you need to look at. Look at your diet, look at what you're eating. Has that changed? Are you having problems now? Because sometimes, as we get older, we can't digest things the same way.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Love bananas before, never gave me a problem, but now they're kind of giving me a problem. So just kind of pay attention, little extra attention to things, but don't get nervous. Don't think, if you have an upset stomach that you definitely have COVID. But I mean, with the anxiety and everything else that's going on because of this coronavirus, just be mindful. If this is just something different, you're eating the same things, but now all of a sudden you're having problems. You're having the problems without eating. You have a normal appetite and now your appetite is gone for no known reason. Just kind of look at those things.
Right. And Dr. William Che, who is a professor of gastroenterology and nutrition scientist at the University of Michigan, says there's no question at this point in time that GI symptoms can be a manifestation of COVID-19. And he advises if you don't have a history, just like what you said, if you don't have an history of GI trouble and experience a sudden onset of diarrhea, nausea, vomiting, or loss of appetite, check in with your doctor. You probably want to get tested. And he also recommends that if you think someone has COVID-19, you should not be sharing a toilet with them unless you obviously have no other choice. And other tips: disinfect bathroom surfaces often, especially high-touch areas such as toilet and sink handles. Don't share toilet paper rolls with someone who has COVID-19, and always flush with the cover closed to minimize the spread of germs. And you have to be vigilant about personal hygiene. I find it really interesting that I'm reading all these reports now, and they're basically all the stuff that we started talking about in March that people are finally catching up to.
Okay, but ironically, did I not just say that about the kids in the school?
Absolutely, absolutely.
And I mean, understand people, we have a lot of different reports that we do here, but we don't go into in depth about every report.
Mm-hmm.
And so here's this report coming from the doctor about the toileting situations.
Mm-hmm.
And then your children are going in, they're talking about toilet. I didn't mention that about the toilet paper rolls. But once you're in the store, what is somebody going to be following behind you, changing the stalls or handing out, doling out toilet paper to make sure kids aren't touching it? I mean, come on. And the thing is, remember, they're saying that children are super breeders. So they may not get it as badly, but they can sure infect a whole truckload of people.
Right, right. So another one of the symptoms we've talked about in the past, the loss of taste or smell, and so they're recognizing this. So, obviously, if you have a cold or a stuffy nose, you might, lose a lack of smell, but usually people are losing a level of loss in taste that is above and beyond what you would have for a regular cold. And they're saying about 65% of the people who tested positive for COVID-19 reported loss of taste and smell. So it's one of the strongest predictors of the illness among those studied. And so they've had this in different studies from the University of California, San Diego. They've also had studies from Rutgers University also talking about this as well.
Well, all I could say on that is more to come.
Mm-hmm.
Because as time goes on, we kept seeing a lot of different symptoms pop up. Aside from the normal ones in the beginning, the coughing, tightness of breath, tightness in the chest, difficulty breathing, the loss of taste and smell.
Mm-hmm.
Now you're talking about toes. Now people are starting to have chest, heart problems, joint problems. They started reporting a lot of blood clots.
Mm-hmm. And the last one to talk about is also neurological effects. And so dizziness, headaches, and confusion has also been reported. More than 36% of the patients in Wuhan reported neurological symptoms during their COVID. And so for older adults, this can be just as devastating, and sometimes it's overlooked because sometimes it's misdiagnosed as dementia or other diseases common with aging. And so these are things that need to be looked at as well.
Yeah, unfortunately, I know so many people that had it and they fought it and they they beat it, and I have to put the quotes around it because these people are still in such bad shape.
Mm-hmm.
You
Mm-hmm.
know, they can't return to work.
Mm-hmm.
They're still suffering. The mental health issues behind this, when it came to mental health, it was something that was overlooked, in a lot of cases, especially in poor and black and brown areas. When people were taking their children in and saying, listen, my child's having problems, and it was like, medicate them.
Mm-hmm.
They
Mm-hmm.
never got to the bottom of it. But there's a lot of people who have not had COVID, have not
Mm-hmm.
had any symptoms, have no reason to think that they're even asymptomatic, and they're suffering terribly mentally and psychologically behind this.
Mm-hmm.
And if we had no real health care systems, really looking at mental health in deadly, I don't know. We're really, really in a bad place. There's so many things that were just overlooked and continue to be overlooked.
Mm-hmm. So there's two more symptoms I want to talk about. One is blood clots. And so some studies have found that as many as 30% of the people with severe cases of COVID had blood clotting complications. And the Zucker School of Medicine at Hofstra said as many as 40% of patients died from blood clots, including microclots, and the destruction that they can cause, which could be heart attack, stroke, lung damage, etc. And so the risk of blood clots are anywhere from 3 to 6 fold greater, more than they're used to seeing. And so this is something that a lot of the doctors are trying to understand and figure out, why that occurs. So that's another danger. And then the final one is that they're looking into a connection between COVID-19 and hearing loss, and so they're finding people who have tinnitus, ringing in the ears, even after the other symptoms subside. And so these are also another way. I mean, this COVID-19, it just, gets in there, and it did so much damage. We in the first early stages, we only concentrated on basically the pulmonary and respiratory stuff, but it plays havoc.
Yeah, it's pretty deep, and the bad part about it is that there's so many things just throwing, tossing people to and fro that I know a lot of people aren't reading stuff now. They're just sort of kind of like in denial. I don't want to go any deeper into this. I know as much as I need to know. I'm okay. That's how we get caught when we relax. And I'm not saying, lose your mind over it and get so structured and not live your life, but still pay attention
Mm-hmm.
to the
Mm-hmm.
different information that you're getting without losing your mind. Like when you're looking at clots and stuff like that,
Mm-hmm.
pay attention. Oftentimes it affects your legs. Are your legs swelling? Do you have pain in your legs from, you just didn't have it before? Is there tightness in your leg? Does it feel hard? Maybe not even swollen, but hard, you know, or you're feeling this pain out of nowhere and you're not, and the funny thing is, I've seen people have blood clots, kind of know it, tell them to go to the hospital, touch their legs, and they were hard. And people refused to go to the hospital and died like 2 days later from a blood clot.
Mm-hmm.
If you feel any tightness in your chest, but you don't have any of those other symptoms, but you may have pain in your legs or swelling in your legs, you need to check that out.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And then, the issue of airborne transmission, they're finally, acknowledging this a lot more than we were doing in the early days. The New York Times is talking about an incident in China where one person came on the bus, and then on the bus, 24 people were affected. and it just proves that it was airborne. And early on, they were trying to tell us, "Oh, it doesn't transmit by airborne," but obviously that turned out to be not the case, and it just underscores what we're talking about in terms of closed and closed spaces. Why it is protocol if you're going inside anywhere other than your own house, you better have a mask on. If you're going to be in a store, a restaurant, a an office, whatever, for whatever reason, you need to have the mask on. You need to practice social distancing because it's the closed spaces where the virus has basically did its most damage. That's why we're concerned about the schools, because at the end of the day, our schools are enclosed spaces, and there's no way you can fill up a building full of kids and not have a high level of risk. And I do not blame the teachers and the principals for not only protecting the safety of the kids, but protecting their own safety. And then we encourage everybody, use a high degree of common sense. Pay attention to this information we're giving you, and not the misinformation. And we're going to go to, one of our final wrap up stories, which is talking about the new doctor at the White House and what that entails. And
before we go there, Bob, could I say something? What is the situation with feeding the kids in the schools? Because
oh,
I heard that the lunchrooms would be closed, but how are you going to teach a kid all day long and they're hungry?
okay, I did not hear that the lunchrooms are closed. I'm gonna have to look into that. But I don't see how you can't. I don't know how that works.
Parents, look into that. For
Mhm,
you look into that. I did see a picture of kids they were in the auditorium.
mhm,
They had, the regular lunch room set up. And the kids
mhm,
were widely spaced. They looked like they was maybe, from appearances, maybe 10, 12 feet apart. And they had tables on the stage. But
mhm,
that school was only operating at like 25% capacity.
mhm,
So if you're talking about full out, some of these schools, you're talking about filling these schools with kids.
mhm.
And how's that going to work? But that feeding of children, I'm wondering, how are you going to do that?
Hmm. All right, we'll look further into that. So back to so evidently our president has gone shopping for doctors, because evidently if he doesn't like the ones, he didn't like Fauci, and I guess he doesn't like what Dr. Burks is telling us, because no matter what, these people have some sense of semblance of science, and as soon as they start talking about it, if it goes against what he wants to hear. So the latest one is a Dr. Scott W. Atlas, who's been arguing, this is according to the New York Times, that the science of mask wearing is uncertain, that children cannot pass on the coronavirus, and that the role of government is not to stamp out the virus, but to protect its most vulnerable citizens as COVID-19 takes its course. And so this guy, he's a radiologist, senior fellow at Stanford University's conservative Hoover Institution. He's not an epidemiologist, so this is not his strength. But evidently, he's been on Fox News, and so that's probably where he got his that's his job interview. And according to Dr. Carlos Del Rio, who is an infectious disease expert at Emory, he says, I think Trump clearly does not like the advice he was receiving from the people who are the experts, Fauci, Birx, etc. So he slowly shifted from their advice to somebody who tells him what he wants to hear. And so this is obviously very disturbing. It's not surprising that this guy is now the guy on board to sing the song that they want to sing to us about COVID. Um,
Well,
So,
what happened to the other female black doctor? Did she get the Omarosa treatment? What happened to her?
oh, you mean the one at the CDC?
Yeah,
The problem was she was actually trying to help them people, so they're not going to let her speak. You know, she's actually trying to use her skills to help solve the problem, and so anything that actually acknowledges that there's a real problem, she's not likely to be able to speak at all. And as you saw, the CDC has basically their role has been minimized. Now we have the FDA person talking about it, and everybody from every other organization other than the one that should be, and that seems to be a par for the course for this administration. If they have an area where the agency actually tries to do their job, they'll just shift to another agency. It's like the Department of Homeland Security coming out and saying that the Justice Department is investigating Black Lives Matter activists and looking to arrest them. And first of all, obviously, it's ridiculous and unconstitutional. But look at, why would the Department of Homeland Security be talking about what the Justice Department is supposed to be doing? And
right.
it's just more of the madness that this administration has brought on us. It's crazy.
And cheering on police who are abusive,
Mm-hmm.
peaceful protesters. It's time to wake up.
Mm-hmm.
It's
Yeah.
time to wake up, because even if it's one or two black people, brown people who are talking about Trump is doing a good job, it is time to put an end to that thinking. Open your eyes and see what's going on. Now, you have a lot of us that saying, oh, well, we know that they fudged the numbers, and a lot of the people that died didn't die from COVID. And, so they put COVID anyway on the death certificates, and the hospitals were being paid to get more COVID patients. But then you have to remember what your governor said early on. They were getting numbers from the medical institutions on the amount of dead people, the amount of sick people, and he even threw his hands up in the air. I don't even know if they're accurate. It may be more. But then you had so much information coming from the internal staffing, who was saying, the numbers were much higher than what was reported. Hospitals were going weeks without reporting deaths. And the amount of people on respirators. So you have to think about that. For all those people that you had the nursing home in Harlem who said 5 people, and come to find out it was 25 or 28 bodies in storerooms and closets.
Mm-hmm.
So I mean, you really got to think about all of these things. But right now, let's look at the numbers that we do have. We do have like 40, what is it, like 40 million people unemployed through COVID.
Mm-hmm.
We do have 180, and even if it's less COVID and more people that needed to be reported that died from it, either way, somewhere along the line, that number's going to probably pretty much balance out.
Mm-hmm.
Look at that. All the people that's now will be homeless. There's a lot of people that the moratorium is not going to work for.
Mm-hmm.
They're going to be homeless. Look at all the food insecure people. 6 months later, you've got lines wrapping around corners. Thousands of people that in dire need of food. And this came from this administration.
Mm-hmm.
Who told you, let's not forget, it was a hoax. It will go away in a few minutes. And it'll go away with the World War II. World
Yeah.
War II caused it to go away. 30 years, like 25 years before World War II even happened, this man has been found to have told 20,000, 20,000 plus lies to you, because we're not buying into it.
Mm-hmm.
Look at the numbers and ask yourself seriously, if you really plan to go into the polls and vote for this man, do you really plan to not exercise your vote that people died and were maimed for to give you the right for? Are you really going to discourage people from voting blue? Because that's the only hope we have, even if it's the lesser of two evils. Find the lesser of two evils. And don't say what people did. The bottom line is let them get in and hold them accountable. But this man has already proven who he is and what he thinks about America. He doesn't.
Mm-hmm.
It's just that simple. He's not thinking about America. So let these people get in. That you can't do a worse job than he's doing. That's one thing we know. Who in the world could we find that could possibly do a worse job than Trump?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, when you look at it.
Absolutely. So we want to close this particular broadcast out. We have a few announcements from our community partners about job opportunities. There is a opportunity for police communication technician jobs. You can get more information at nyc.gov/careers. The deadline is September 22nd. And there's also an opportunity for home attendance jobs. If you're interested, you can send an email to this email address that's on the screen. That's Louisa R70, the number 70, for Harlem at gmail.com. I understand that with this job, there is a $500 bonus. Let's see, how does that work? There's a $500 one-time bonus after working with them for 60 plus days. It's weekly pay, 24/7 support, and healthcare benefits. So that sounds like something that someone might be interested in. Obviously, we want to share information. We recognize that everybody is going through some really extreme times right now, and we try to share information that will help you. Also, we have some information for people and organizations that want to build a website. What's Next Academy is offering live web builds that are going to be going on between now and Labor Day. So if you're interested in building your own website for free, send an email to livebylaborday.at gmail.com. They'll send you some information. They'll be doing some, and the way it works is that online there'll be groups of people and they will show you how to connect to a free lifetime web account, and you can build your website along with a group of people, and we'll show you how to do it, and you'll be able to connect it to your email and social media. So if you need a free website, you should drop an email to livebylaborday at gmail.com, and sometime over the next couple of days, you'll be able to jump on a workshop and get yourself straight. And for people who are starting online businesses, it's an ideal scenario. These websites connect with e-commerce, so you can sell your own products on the air and make your own money.
Sounds good.
Yep.
Sounds good. You know.
So we're going to continue to stay on these issues. Oh, one final thing that I think we need to talk about. We talked about it from the beginning, and we're going to continue to talk about it. As we're going into the fall, we can see the weather is already starting to change. We're getting ready to go into a period where we're not going to be outside as much. It is extremely important to build up your immune system. And so the things we talked about in the early days, which everybody in the world has caught up to us, your vitamin C, your vitamin D, your zinc, your all your proper nutrients. You want to start building that up into your system now. You want to start basically getting your resources. We'll share some more of this over the course of the month. in terms of the different foods that have these nutritions on it. When we first started in March talking about it, we recommended to people to get supplements, and the reason that was we went into a quick shutdown, and we recognized that you might not be able to get the foods that you want, but you could get vitamins. You might have already had them in your house, and so vitamins was a good way to get the nutrition into your system as quickly as possible. But the best way is really from a nutritional standpoint. But one way or the other, you really need to start to up your game in terms of your personal immune system. This is always from day one now and forever. The best defense against COVID is to have your immune system working optimally, and you can do that. And the mass media has still refused to really pick up on this fact, but there's plenty of information online. You can Google COVID-19 and vitamin D, COVID-19 and vitamin C, COVID-19 and zinc, magnesium. There's a whole host of things that have been shown to have been effective, but the vitamin companies don't have the big budgets that the vaccine companies do. So you're not going to see the push by the mass media. So we have to share this information with you, protect yourself from the inside out, and release. Try to reduce as much stress in your life as possible, because stress certainly adds to your vulnerability in getting sick.
Yeah, it's like the summer. I'm not sure if it's being cut short, but these last few days and some of the days to come, it's going to look a lot like this. So we're going to be inside.
Mm-hmm.
Just as we spoke in the beginning about preparing before they actually asked us to go into sort of a partial shutdown.
Mm-hmm.
We're asking people then to start making preparations, getting extra food, getting those vitamins in your home, those vegetables and those fruits, water, extra water, non-perishable foods, And so now this is a good time to really listen to that. Because now we're not going to be going out as much. There's going to be a lot of rain coming. We're in a hurricane season.
Mm-hmm.
So, we're not really sure what's happening. We're getting little pieces of different storms and stuff that's happening around the country. So, this is the time to start to really think about that. Start making these preparations now.
Mm-hmm.
If you didn't before. And also remember, we're coming close up on flu, pneumonia season, hurricane season is going into November, and we are still in the midst of a pandemic. The combinations of all of those, there still will be hot days, and there's a possibility that we could have a real heat advisory. So there's a lot of stuff going on. The more prepared you can get now, the more you can work on that now, the better off you're going to be. Worst time to prepare yourself for an emergency is when you're actually in the midst of it. And right now we have the possibility of being involved in 5 different emergencies at the same time. Start making some preparations.
And this is National Emergency Preparedness Month. We always have information for you in September, but this September, I think more people are listening to us.
Yeah, I think so. Mm-hmm. And look online. There's going to be a lot of emergency preparation events. Just Google National Emergency Preparedness Month and your city, New York City, NYC, and see what's happening around the city. A lot of stuff is happening virtually that will be reminding you of what to do in those situations.
Mm-hmm. So that's it for today. We will be back again next Wednesday morning, 9:30, live on YouTube and Facebook.
Yes, and again, stay safe. I don't know why the guys are on my roof again. They usually see how people con you. When it rains, you're not even supposed to be able to do this work.
Uh-huh.
But here they are.
Mm-hmm.
So pay attention to things that's going on around you, your housing, your landlord. Is anything changing? There's a whole lot of things that people are going to be doing, trying to con people when emergencies take place. Things like this happen that's not supposed to.
Right.
So pay attention. I'm calling down to my management to ask them why are they here in the rain.
Mm-hmm.
So
Absolutely.
pay attention to little things even the little things that's going on around in your neighborhood.
Mm-hmm.
And remember, in the midst of all of that, there's always a possibility we can have blackouts. We just had a blackout in Harlem, in Bronx, and a lot of people didn't even know in the city, didn't even know that they was blacked out.
Mm-hmm.
So there's a lot of stuff that takes place in our communities that people don't even know about. So it's best that we know because we live here and we prepare for those things. So check out nyc.gov. Go there, find out what you need to shelter in place. Make sure you got batteries, you got flashlights. Go there and invest. Go to the dollar store, get this stuff. Prepare yourself. We really, really can't tell you what's coming down the pipe, how much may hit us at the same time. Best way is to be prepared ahead of time.
There it is. All right. Stay safe, y'all. We'll see you next week.
Take care, everybody.